The world and every part of it, whether you call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ or whether you're just living your life, all are looking for something they can believe in. Something they can hold on to. Something they can believe makes a difference. That they can find the strength when things are really bad. That they can believe has enough power and enough strength and enough authority that they can be sure when like 2 o'clock in the night when you can't sleep and you're laying there and what in the world's going to happen? This is not something we struggle with at the church, although we have our own questions, don't we? What's the future going to be like? How are we going to get this done? What's it going to look like? But we're not alone. And it's never been any different. I want to share with you a sermon. And it comes partly because Pastor Nate referred to it a few weeks ago when he was preaching about experiencing God in God's house and teaching about the tabernacle that God told Moses to build in the desert. And sort of just off the wall, off the cuff, he said, I've never heard anybody preach on Aaron's rod. Now he's going to get it. Now this is not Aaron's rod. I don't make that claim, all right? This happens to be my walking stick. I've been working on it a few years. It's actually the limb, trunk of a lemon tree that was the bane of my existence when I first moved into my house over there at Hamlet's Grove. It had thorns on it that were at least 4 inches long. And they grabbed me from wherever I happened to be walking and would reach out and poke into me and hook into my clothing. And it never produced a lemon. And so I took my saw to it. You are a tree who is not going to bother me anymore. But you know, when I started cutting on it, that wood was hard. And I thought, I shouldn't just throw that stick in the trash. I ought to make something out of it. But what could I do? So I made me a walking stick. And I thought, in different places, you got to have something to support you, and you got to have something to hang on to. You need to poke somebody and use it for emphasis. But where I walk, sometimes there are dogs that you don't really want to be too close to. So all you have to do is reverse angle, and then just ask the dog to come close by. No. But anyway, you understand what I'm talking about. Aaron's rod was a walking stick. The text for this morning's sermon comes out of Numbers, chapter 17. And if you want to take that story, that event in history recorded there, and you want to follow along, you can read, but don't start there, because you got to go back several chapters. I mean, number 16, tells of the most terrible revolt the Israel people of Israel, ones escaping out of Egypt and headed to the promised land, hopefully. 250 people, the strongest leaders in the entire nation, all of the key people in the entire Israel nation, came against Moses and Aaron in revolt. They said, how dare you guys think you should be in charge? We're every bit as qualified as you. Who made you boss over us? 2016 is coming. It's going to be a presidential campaign. There are already lots of people who will say, I should be the boss. I ought to be the one that sits in the big chair, making the decisions and making the rest of you dance. But if you think that's going to be sort of crazy, and all the claims and the counterclaims and the promises and all the... You haven't seen anything until you've actually walked for a while as a people of Israel. 12 sons started this whole mess. I mean, Jacob had 12 boys, and they all wanted to win. Remember what they did to Joseph? They do it to each other too. Benjamin kind of drew a pass, but they were after each other. You move the story forward about 6 or 7 generations, now you've got 12 tribes of families, and they're all eager to be in the driver's seat. And they all think they ought to be having more responsibility and more authority and more power. And who in their right mind would make the tribe of Levi the ones who could sit there just in all the pretty garments and all the fancy clothes, making all the rules in the tabernacle about what God wanted everybody else to do? Well, we ought to be the ones sitting there in the easy chair rather than out here making a living. If you think controversy is part of our world, well, what are we going to do about this? And the Supreme Court did that, and this one did that, and the police did this, and you haven't even scratched the surface until you've gone back through history and seen all the controversy. What can we believe in? Who can we trust? Who can we hold on to? What's really true? And if it's really true, is there enough power behind it that we can believe it can happen? Okay. Finally, God, in Numbers 17, says, I'm just about sick of this thing. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to stop this. And I'm going to stop it right quick. You tribes of Israel, you 12 big shots, each bring me a walking stick. Write your name on it. Write the name of the tribe on the walking stick, one for each tribe. And I will show you who's boss. And it's not Levi, and it's not anybody else, it's me. I'm going to choose who you can believe, who you can follow, who's telling you the truth, who has the power to follow through. So, I don't know how many arguments there were over whose staff was going to get put forward for the big show. But eventually they came up with 12 rods, 12 stacks, 12 walking sticks. And they brought them to Moses. Each one wrote their name on it. And Moses said, tomorrow morning, we will know. We will know. He took them into the temple, the tabernacle, the tent of testimony, and he laid them out before that veil of the temple. And then he walked out of the tent and he closed the doors. And Fort Knox couldn't have been more secure. But nobody was going to go in there without authority. You know what God does to people who are trying to sneak around? I'll put mine over closer. Maybe it's something more powerful. I have them, it's up closer to the veil. Or no, nobody's going to sneak in there. Fear of death is pretty strong. In one night, in just one evening and night, God did his thing. The next morning when they walked in, they collected the 12 walking sticks and they brought them out. And each man, each tribe got their stick. And it was just like it had been before. Until they gave the one to Aaron. who was going to be the high priest, who was the tribe of Levi, who was going to be the one taking care of the tabernacle and the temple later. And his stick had sprouted leaves. Would you believe that a stick without a root, without any signs of life, without watering it, would suddenly grow leaves? But there were leaves on the stick. And more than that, there were buds on the stick. And there were blossoms on the stick. And there was early fruit on the stick. And there was ripe fruit on the stick. Do you know how long it takes to go from being in a season where it's just leaves to being where there's full, ripe fruit? It was almonds. Full, ripe, fragrant, rich almonds on the walking stick. Now, I'll tell you what. When I took the saw to this tree, this thing is most certainly dead. And anybody who thinks that we're going to get lemonade tomorrow from what comes out of this stick is just fooling themselves. Because dead is really dead. Except when God says, no, it's not. Not mine. Not under my authority. I want to just remind you real quickly. There's a story of Jesus in his last week was hungry. And he called out to a tree whose very business was providing fruit to eat. And he said, I'm hungry. I need something to refresh myself. And he walked to the fig tree in Jerusalem. And the fig tree didn't have any fruit on it. And Jesus cursed the fig tree. And they said, well, why would you do such a silly thing? It's not the time for fruit. It's just the time for leaves. You can't have, we haven't had the blossoms yet. We haven't had the bees come and pollinate them. We haven't had the fruit begin to ripen. It's months before there's going to be any figs. How could you curse a tree for not being anything but leaves like it's supposed to have? When God says, this is what I want you to do, this is what I want you to do. And every physical thing that Jesus Christ commanded in his ministry did exactly what it was told. The waves and the wind, be still. Water, I want wine. Everything. Now the people knew what the rod of God really was. They knew. They had watched Moses use the rod that God had put into his hand, the staff that he had used. Remember what it did? He threw it on the ground and it became a serpent. Well, that looked pretty good until the Egyptian prophets of all the things that they were working on, the fancy gods they had in Egypt, threw down their sticks, they became serpents too. No problem. Until Moses' serpent ate all of them, and then it became a rod again. Whoops. It was the rod that he touched into the Nile River. And suddenly, what had been pure water became a river of blood. They knew the power of the rod. The rod of God had called down curses upon the people that caused pain and suffering and disease and pestilence of every kind. And it was the rod of God that Moses held out over the Red Sea, and the waters divided, and they could walk through on dry ground. They knew the power of the rod of God. Remember now, it was also the rod of God who was extended back over the Red Sea, and it completely destroyed the Egyptian armies and chariots. They knew the power that God had placed in the instrument in Moses' hands. And it was the rod of God that caused the water to flow out of the rock. Totally impossible. You know how sponge-like a granite chunk can be? There's not a single place for a drop of water in a hard, solid granite rock. But when the rod hit the rock, there was water. And it still comes out today. When the people saw the rod of Aaron come out of the tabernacle, no root, no stem, no sign of any kind of life-supporting systems, but there it was, complete with its leaves, with its buds, with its immature fruit, with its full ripened almonds. They fell down on the ground and they said, "We are as good as dead. We're doomed. We're doomed. We have challenged God himself. And he has repudiated our attempts to take over. We're cooked." And you know what? They were right. God could have snapped his fingers and they'd have gone forever out of existence. Just that quick. I'm showing you people what I can do. I'm demonstrating to you. I'm giving you tangible proof of what I can do. It was dead. It was dead, and now it's not. And not only is it not dead now, it continues to live. It continues to bear fruit. It continues to have leaves. It continues to stay fresh. It continues to thrive. So they took the rod of Aaron and they put it in the tabernacle of testimony, just so people could peek through the door if they ever had a question and see it. They watched it. They tested it. They made sure it was real and not phony somehow. It wasn't just a carving painted green. It wasn't somebody sprinkling almond scent on an old dead stick. That doesn't even smell like lemons anymore. Used to. No, it was real. And after a while, God said, "Okay, now, you've had your chance." They took the Ark of the Covenant, where the tablets of stone had been placed. They had a jar of manna. Remember the food that was given, bread of heaven that came down every day? It only had a life of one day, because if they held it for another day, it would just rot and be totally putrid, except on the weekend, on the Sabbath. And they put a jar of that in there, and it never spoiled. And they took Aaron's rod with all the leaves and all the fruit, and they put it in there as a remembrance. And then they set it back into the Holy of Holies and drew the veil across it, and it was where God lived. And you couldn't look at it anymore. We can't go and look at Aaron's rod anymore. It's over there where God lives. Oh, I wish we had a rod like that today. Wouldn't that make a difference? We could walk that thing up and down the street and say, "People, Fellowship Church of God's got something here. We got the power of God here. Don't we? Take a look at this. Smell it. Touch it. Feel it. Taste it." No, we don't have a rod like that. And this won't work. It's worthless. That gets so heavy, I'm not going to carry it anymore. Well, you move 1,700 years forward in the future. And there's Jesus, and he's walking in his ministry among all the people. And we see him work with all kinds of miraculous signs and wonders. They fill stone jars full of pure water. And he speaks the command. And out of the water and out of the stone comes wine for the wedding feast. When they have to get across the Lake of Galilee and the wind and the waves are terrifying, they look up and here's Jesus just walking casually across the surface of the lake. He didn't have anything in his hands when people would come to him all broken up and sick and filled with leprosy and disease, disability, all kinds of problems from twisted up limbs to demon possession. They come to him and they say, what are we going to do? I'm blind. He didn't have a stick. He just spit on the ground and made a little mud, slowly just gently rubbed that clay into the man's face where the eyes should have been. It had never been there. Born blind. Without the ability to even look normal. I mean, not just see normal. He didn't even look normal. Just ever so gently. Now go and wash it off. And as soon as the water hits his face, he realizes, I have eyes. I can see. Disease after disease became easy for Jesus to just say, here, go show yourselves to the priests. Go do it. It's all over. It's done. It's handled. And when Lazarus had died, all he had to do was say, I was there when it all started. I called it into existence with my simple words of command. I'll show you exactly how I did it. Are you watching? Are you listening? Thousands of people all around him. Jerusalem has emptied out to grieve along with Mary and Martha. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? Do you understand what I'm doing? Do you understand I'm the resurrection and the life? Lazarus, come out. Still want to discuss evolution with me? Come on, give me your best shot. Yeah, but he died. Dead as that stick. And that had been the end of the story, too. The rod of God. Just a dead stick in a tomb with a big heavy stone over the door. What could you believe in? What could you hold on to? What has the power to move the impossible circumstances? What can you hold on to when everything else has let you down? You've been lied to by the press, by politicians, by the church, maybe, by people who you believed in, by your friends. I'm sorry to say, even pastors let us down. I can tell you the truth. One of the men who sat with me when I told everyone in that small group of pastors what God had done to call me into ministry is sitting on the sideline because he couldn't hold it together. He let me down. I believed in him. I trusted him. I felt the anointing of God through him. What happened? But that wasn't the end of the story. God continues to say, but you don't believe him, you gotta believe me. I'm the one you can believe in. I'm the one who never let you down. Now we come to the New Testament period, the time when you and I live. Do you carry a walking stick? Do you carry a rod? Then you're helpless, huh? Nothing you can do. Sorry. There's a short message. No hope. No. Jesus came out of the tomb full of blossoms, full of leaves, full of fruit, full of maturity, full of life. And you could see the symbols of his death. It was as clear as that stick is right here in front of us. It was all there, Thomas. Do you see it? But it didn't win. I'm alive. I'm warm to the touch. You can see the love that's in my eyes. I'm not angry with you. Peter, do you love me? You can see that I love you. Peter, do you love me? Show me. Peter, do you love me? Show me. You can see that I'm taking care of you. Peter, do you love me? Then take me into the field and take care of the people who need something to believe in. And so, as Peter climbed up the steps to the temple, and a beggar confronts him and says, "Alms! Alms! Alms! I'm starving! I gotta have something to eat!" Finally got the message. He finally claimed it. I don't have any silver or gold. I'm a poor man like you. But I carry the rod of God. I carry Jesus Christ in a resurrected form with me as my rod, my power, my authority, my truth. Stand up and look. And he never looked back. He just kept doing it. I want you to understand. People will tell you why it can't be done. In every possible way. Every imaginable way, they will show you that it can't be done. It's a hopeless case. Lemons, no lemonade. You're not going to get anything out of the stick. That's not God's answer. That's not God's answer. Now, I don't have a magic wand, because the rod of God is not a magic wand. This is, it's not something I can wait and, I'm going to get what I want. The name it and claim it gospel is not exactly what Jesus told us about. But when he moves, and we understand our place in his plan, we have the authority to say, "Thus saith the Lord." And nobody's going to stand in the way of that. In humility, we can say, "I have God and all the authority of heaven to use to face my problem, to face my issues, to face my questions, to face my doubts, to face my fears, to help me figure out what my life is supposed to be." I want you to understand, if you're using any other walking stick, it's just a dead stick. It'll let you down. This thing is not going to last forever. I can't be sure, but I think there might be a bug working in it. I don't think so yet, but there might be one day. It's just a stick. But the rod of God lasts forever. And the authority that we have, that Jesus Christ placed into our hands, is real. And don't let anybody tell you there's no hope. There's no way to deal with that. You're bound. You're restricted. You're limited. You are confined. You're bottled up. You are stuck. Simply is true. Would you bow your heads with me for a moment of prayer? Dear Jesus, we're going to sing a song here. It's going to talk about how it's well with our soul. And then some of us might sing that, we'd be lying. Because everything's not all right with our soul. But it can be. If we let your authority and your truth and your resurrection power show us what you want us to be. We're not stuck. We're not locked in. We're not bound. We're not limited. We are God's people. He created us. He called us. He stirs within us that hunger to be a part of His kingdom. He makes us aware that there is more than we ever claimed before, and that we can have it if we surrender our lives and let Him bring the life back into our old dead lives. Silver and gold is not what it takes. It is the power and the authority of God, alive and working in the world, that's going to change things and make a difference in people's lives. We've seen people transform, turn completely around, made into new people, because God is still in the power business. He's in the saving business. He's in the rescuing business. He's in the people-making business. We just ask, Lord, that you'll let us be a part of that. Help us to carry the message, the fragrance of Jesus Christ, into the community, so that we can have a smile on our face and not a frown and say, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get this job done. I don't know how I'm going to reach people. We're just bubbling over with the joy of God. We just can't wait to share with people. It's amazing what God's doing here. You see, we believe and trust in you. And we're placing ourselves, surrendering ourselves to you again this morning. Make the words of the song we're going to sing ring true in our hearts as we surrender to you and make it well with our souls.